Welcome to a journey through the fascinating world of terrestrial animal life of the Cretaceous period. For this video, we'll particularly focus on the many dinosaurs, pterosaurs, and mammals of this period. From the bird-hipped Ornithischians to the lizard-hipped Saurischians, we'll venture through the lives of some iconic as well as many lesser-known dinosaurs. We'll then take to the skies to meet the fascinating flying reptiles known as pterosaurs. Finally, we'll meet the early mammals that lived alongside these creatures, considering the modern mammalian dichotomy of egg-laying monotremes and live-birthing therians. Now, onto the incredible world of the Cretaceous period and some of the terrestrial animal life that thrived within it. The Cretaceous period was a time of incredible diversity and transformation for dinosaurs. Their continued evolution saw the emergence of most of the most famous dinosaurs to have ever existed. To better understand the story of dinosaur history and evolution in this period, let's look at each of the two primary groups of dinosaurs separately, the Ornithischians and Saurischians. In this section, we'll explore some important subgroups within each of these categories and highlight some of their most notable members. Ornithischians, or bird-hipped dinosaurs, were a diverse group of mainly herbivorous dinosaurs. They're characterized by their unique hip structure with a pubis bone that points down and backwards parallel with the ischium. Despite this similarity in hip type with birds themselves evolved from the Theropods, a Saurischian type of dinosaur, the type we'll discuss after we're done with the Ornithischians. Ornithischians include several well-known subgroups that thrived during the Cretaceous, including Ceratopsians, Hadrosaurs, and Ankylosaurs. Ceratopsians. We already met the earliest known Ceratopsian, Yinlong Downzai, in the previous video on the Jurassic. Later Ceratopsians were large, quadrupedal, horned and frilled dinosaurs. However, the early examples were much smaller bipeds. One early Cretaceous Ceratopsian genera is a good example of this early type, Pterosaurs. Later in the Cretaceous, large-bodied quadrupeds emerged, including the most famous of them all at the tail end of the Cretaceous, Triceratops. Another large Ceratopsian of the late Cretaceous, though some millions of years earlier than Triceratops, is Styracosaurus. Ceratopsians are a clade within Marginocephalia. Marginocephalia itself consists of both the clade of Ceratopsia and the clade of Pachycephalosauria, which we'll consider now. While earlier claims are on the table, the earliest definitive Pachycephalosaur doesn't arrive until the late Cretaceous in the form of cynocephaly. Pachycephalosaurs were a group of small to medium-sized bipedal ornithischians that were characterized by their thickened skulls. Generally, these creatures ranged in length from 2 to 3 meters, though the largest known one, Pachycephalosaurus, has been estimated at about 4.5 meters long and weighing some 370 to 450 kilograms. Another example is Stygimoloch, whose skulls are often found with lesions likely brought on by trauma-induced infections. That is, it seems that at least for Stygimoloch, their thickened skulls served useful in combat. Another pachycephalosaur thought to have likely used its head in combat is Stegosaurus. Another group of successful ornithischians of the late Cretaceous were the Hadrosaurs, or the duck-billed dinosaurs. These dinosaurs were descended from the iguanodontian lineage that had picked up in the Jurassic. The unique dental features of hadrosaurs, namely a dental battery, allowed them to process plant material very efficiently. Some examples are Parasaurolophus and Edmontosaurus. The last Ornithischian dinosaurs we'll consider here today are the Ankylosaurs. Ankylosaurs were heavily armored herbivorous dinosaurs that emerged in the Jurassic and now lived in the Cretaceous period. They were bulky, heavily armored, quadrupedal herbivorous dinosaurs. Ankylosaurs can be further divided into their main two families, the Ankylosaurids and the Nodosaurids. Ankylosaurs had massive tail clubs for defense, and examples include the late Cretaceous Ankylosaurus and Euoplocephalus. Nodosaurids, in contrast, lacked tail clubs, and many had spikes projecting from their shoulders. Examples may include the early Cretaceous, possibly basal nodosaurid Polacanthus, and a definite late Cretaceous example is Edmontania. Now let's turn our attention to the other major dinosaur lineage, the Saurischians. Saurischians, or lizard-hip dinosaurs, are characterized by a hip structure with a pubis bone that's oriented forward towards the head. Two important subgroups of Saurischians are the Theropoda and Sauropoda, both of which we'll be considering in this video. First, let's take a look at the Theropods. Theropods were primarily carnivorous dinosaurs that walked on two legs. They ranged from small, agile hunters to massive, fearsome predators. The Cretaceous period saw the rise of many iconic theropods, such as Tyrannosaurus rex and Spinosaurus. By far the most diverse group of theropods were the Coelurosaurs, and we'll start by considering them. The Cretaceous saw the continuation and emergence of several well-known Coelurosaur subgroups. We'll consider two of them that produced two of the more famous dinosaurs, Velociraptor and Tyrannosaurus rex, of the families of Dromaeosaurs and Tyrannosaurids, respectively. Dromaeosaurs lived throughout the Cretaceous period. These were generally small to medium-sized, feathered carnivorous dinosaurs. Examples include the early Cretaceous Deinonychus, Utahraptor, and Microraptor. Microraptor gui is one of at least 5 dromaeosaur species suggested to have the capacity to glide, and in Microraptor's case, perhaps even have powered flight. Moving to the late Cretaceous, there's a group of dromaeosaurs adapted to a semi-aquatic lifeway, the Halschoraptorans. And far more famously from the late Cretaceous, there's Velociraptor. The Tyrannosaurids appear in the late Cretaceous. They were apex predators who emerged from the smaller-sized Tyrannosauridae, whose record started in the Jurassic. Iconic species include Tyrannosaurus rex, Albertosaurus, and Gorgosaurus. Beyond Coelurosaurs, there were many other theropods that left their mark on the Cretaceous. Let's briefly meet some specific members. Dating from early in the late Cretaceous is the longest known terrestrial carnivore, the reaching 14 meters long Spinosaurus. Spinosaurus has a long and low skull, like a crocodilian, and lived a semi-aquatic lifestyle, eating fish as part of its diet. Some other monstrously sized theropods dating to the early late Cretaceous as well are Carcharodontosaurus and Giganotosaurus, both of which belong to Carcharodontosauridae. The oldest known giant Carcharodontosaurids date to earlier still, from the found in early Cretaceous Aptian Age rocks Tyrannotitan and Acrocanthosaurus. Before moving on to the other Saurischian dinosaur type, the Sauropodomorphs, I want to briefly consider the group, some members of which came to be more important now than then, having already descended from the theropods in the Jurassic. The clade, often defined as containing all dinosaurs more closely related to birds than to paravian Deinonychosauria, aviali. Having come on board in the Jurassic, avialins diversified into a wide variety of forms during the Cretaceous period. An early Cretaceous avialin is Confuciusornis, the most diverse and abundant Mesozoic era avialin group. Enantiornithes came on board in the early Cretaceous as well, and they lasted through the duration of the period. The most common ancestor to all modern birds is estimated to have been around at some point during the Cretaceous as well. Sauropods lived through the Cretaceous and saw a number of lineages. One group of sauropods that lived during the Cretaceous period were the Rhybachisaurids. An early Cretaceous example is Nigersaurus, who had an unusually wide muzzle with more than 500 teeth. Rabachisaurids made it into the early late Cretaceous before disappearing. Some early late Cretaceous examples include Rabachisaurus and Lemmisaurus. Moving on to other sauropods, one of the main groups of the clade Titanosauriforms was Brachiosauridae, or old titanosauriforms that are more closely related to Brachiosaurus than to Saltosaurus. Cretaceous brachiosaurids include Pterosaurs of the early Cretaceous and Sonorosaurus, who lived into the early late Cretaceous period. Another titanosauriform group were the Titanosaurs, who included both the largest and the smallest known sauropods. Titanosaurs went on to be the last sauropods to exist, continuing to flourish until the end Cretaceous. A titanosaur of the early Cretaceous was Malawisaurus. Massive ones came in the late Cretaceous, such as the giant Argentinosaurus, and from closer to the end of the Cretaceous, we have Dreadnoughtus and Alamosaurus. With the extinction at the end of the Cretaceous, no non-avian dinosaurs entered our Cenozoic era. Pterosaurs, the flying reptiles of the Mesozoic era, were a diverse group of animals that were the earliest vertebrates to develop powered flight, though by now the earliest birds shared the ear. Pterosaurs are not dinosaurs, though they were closely related, and they can be divided into two primary groups: Rhamphorhynchoids and pterodactyloids. In this section, we'll explore the main characteristics of these groups and discuss some of their most notable members that lived during the Cretaceous period. Rhamphorhynchoids were the earliest group of pterosaurs, originating in the late Triassic and persisting into the Cretaceous. They're defined as all non-pterodactyloid pterosaurs. They were typically characterized by their long tails, and most of them had teeth. Rhamphorhynchoids were generally small to medium-sized, and nearly all of them had disappeared by the end of the Jurassic period. Some Anurognathids made it across the boundary into the Cretaceous. Anurognathids were a unique subgroup of Rhamphorhynchoids that lived from the late Jurassic and perhaps the middle Jurassic to the early Cretaceous. The genus known from the early Cretaceous is Vesperotorylus, and a further find from the early late Cretaceous places Rhamphorhynchoids even later. But despite the paucity of Rhamphorhynchoids during this period, the more derived pterosaurs, the pterodactyloids, were doing much better. Pterodactyloids were the more advanced group of pterosaurs that emerged in the Middle Jurassic and continued to diversify through the Cretaceous period. They were characterized by their short tails and elongated winged metacarpals. The more advanced forms, including all those known from the late Cretaceous, lacked teeth. Some of them reached large sizes as well, such as Tropionathus of the early Cretaceous. From later still is Pteranodon of the late Cretaceous, whose wingspan reached some 6 meters long. Even longer still is the late Cretaceous Quetzalcoatlus. No pterosaurs would enter our Cenozoic era. All living mammals are either egg-laying monotremes or live-birthing placental or marsupial therians. Monotremes have only 5 representative species around, while theria make up all the rest of currently living mammals. Within theria are the eutherians, or all therian mammals that are more closely related to placentals than to marsupials, and correspondingly there are metatherians, or all mammals more closely related to marsupials than to placentals. With that in mind, let's start with the monotremes. Monotremes make their first appearance in the early Cretaceous, with a very early one coming in the form of Teinolophus, who is similar, though significantly smaller, than the monotreme Steropodon, who itself lived in the late early Cretaceous and into the early late Cretaceous. A mere handful of other Cretaceous monotremes are known. As for therians, we already met the earliest known therian in the late Jurassic with the basal eutherian Juramaia. Now let's consider the therian subgroupings of eutherians and metatherians of the Cretaceous. Early Cretaceous eutherians include Acristotherium, Montanalestes, as well as Duralstotherium and Duralstodon. Examples from the late Cretaceous include Gypsonyctops, and a very successful eutherian group of the late Cretaceous was Zelestidae. As for the Metatherians, Cynodelphus of the early Cretaceous had been classified as one, but now with Cynodelphus being reclassified as a eutherian, the oldest known Metatherians are early Cretaceous 110 million years old from western North America. Examples from the late Cretaceous include Didelphodon and Delta Theridium. Although nowadays only the monotremes and therians remain, during the Cretaceous other mammals existed as well. One order of existing mammals, in fact, Multituberculata, is the most diverse mammalian order of the Mesozoic and would survive into our Cenozoic. We'll take a cursory look at their story, as well as that of another mammalian order that existed into but not beyond the late Cretaceous, Eutriconodonta. Now for the multituberculates. The early Cretaceous saw the emergence of more derived forms, the Cimolodonta. Cimolodonts were characterized by less lower premolars and a blade-like lower fourth premolar. The earliest stage of the late Cretaceous, the Cenomanian, saw the Cimolodontans replace the primitive multituberculates, or Plagiaulacida. As for the Eutriconodonts, they reached their peak diversity across the early Cretaceous and then largely disappeared from the fossil record in the early late Cretaceous outside of North America, and the latest North American Eutriconodont appearance comes around 84 million years ago as the genus Alticonodon. That's it. Thanks for joining me on this exploration of the terrestrial animal life of the Cretaceous period. If you enjoyed the journey, leave a like and drop a comment with your favorite Cretaceous creature. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay updated on the latest content. There's plenty more of our story to uncover. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the amazing world etched into the rocks beneath our very feet.